Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Morton, and welcome to my podcast, which is entitled A Cup of Joe. This is a podcast dedicated to health and wellness. So we're going to talk about it all. And I love this subject. I'm passionate about it. And I want you to know something. I'm grateful to be a part of your journey. And again, all the different things that we're talking about are going to help you understand that you hold the key and that your success is in your hands and greatness is out there for you.
This podcast is a 98 Studios production.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of A Cup of Joe. I am so excited for this. We're going to jump into running. We're going to talk about running. We're going to talk about running with one of my favorite people in the world when it comes to the world of running and just in general, Golden Harper, legend, and super stoked to be able to dive into it. Before we get into that, I just want to give you a tip for the day for running. Okay, here's my little tip, because I'm hoping that this podcast is going to inspire someone watching, someone listening to take their exercise to a different level. Start with walking. Maybe that's where you're going to start today. Maybe you're going to start walking. Maybe you're going to transition from walking to running. You're going to start running a little bit more. Maybe you're going to train for a 5K, a 10K, half marathon, a marathon, whatever it might be. And it inspires you to take that to the next level. Maybe it inspires you to get a PR, your own personal record. You know, you're going to push to the next level, whatever it might be. Here's a little tip for running for today. Just a quick tip. Be prepared and ye shall not fear. Be prepared for when you go running. Okay. We're in the season change right now. You want to make sure you have the right gear. You want to make sure you have the right, in fact, Golden and I went for a run this morning. It's amazing. Beautiful, beautiful morning run. It's autumn, personal favorite time of year to run for me. And, came with a little light jacket, very small, very light windbreaker, which was important because we got hit with some canyon wind this morning. Had a little bit of a pair of gloves, real slight pair of gloves that helped protect a bit. And it was exactly what I needed. Had I not had that jacket though, I think it would have been too little. So just be prepared, whether it be the fall, winter, spring, summer, whatever it might be prepared going into it. And okay, I'm telling you this, make sure you go to the bathroom beforehand. Worst thing, I'm telling you, when you're out for a run, prairie dogging it, not fun. Okay, so let's jump in. I'm so excited for this. Truth, isn't it? Every runner will be able to say, okay, so let's jump into this, Golden. I'm so excited to have you with us. Now, those who know Golden, those who know you will know you about Altra Footwear. I mean, you started one of the greatest, and it was your inspiration. It was your story. Others joined along the way. Yes, lots of help.
Including you.
Thank you. Yeah. It was an honor to be a part of that journey. But I mean, it came from your inspiration. It came from your upbringing, your experience, your understanding of running mechanics and help to avoid injuries and the whole bit. Before we jump into that incredible part of the story, this is your background, dude. You are a part of this legendary running family. I mean, your dad was is a legend, Hawk in the running community. Tell us about that upbringing. I mean, you're a family of runners.
Yeah. And, that wasn't the case for my parents. You know, their background was from sedentary families and lots of overweight people. So we show up to family reunions and everybody's like, who are the skinny people? You know, that was just us. Right. And so, my parents didn't have that. And I think they both found running and got stoked about running shortly before they met each other and I was born.
Oh, really?
And as a result, I grew up in a time when my parents, like the stoke was high for running because it had changed their lives, you know, and, you know, they were race directors. My dad was product testing for Nike, working for Nike, when I was, you know, super young and when I was born. And, you know, worked for multiple shoe companies and then started Runner's Corner, the shoe store. And, my mom, you know, has won St. George Marathon a couple times and was second 7 times. So, you know, and I witnessed that all while I was growing up. And so that was kind of the environment I grew up in. My next door neighbor was also an Olympic trials qualifier. Everybody I knew ran. So I was the kid who showed up at kindergarten and I was like, hey, where do you run? And people are just like, don't talk to me. You know, you're weird. But to me, running was life. That's just what people did. I just thought humans ran, you know, which historically humans did. So there's that connection for me. And so, yeah, running has always been life. And yet I don't define myself by it at the same time. So, love it, respect it, love everything it's done for my life and it does for others. It's just a piece of things.
And you grew up in that running store too. Runner's Corner. I mean, everyone in the area, of course, knows your. Yeah,
we opened when I was 9. I started working there at age 9. I started being left there alone at age 10.
Wow.
And I had to know my stuff because, people come in and they're like, hey, can somebody help me? And you're just like, yeah, it's me. Or yeah, it's me. And they're like, okay, I'll be leaving now. And they turn around. I'm like, I can see you have some right footy version on that shoe, Saucony shoe with the ground reaction inertia device. Okay, I'm listening, had to really know my stuff. So from a young age, total shoe nerd, I love shoe technology. Loved it all. Gel, HydroFlow, 3D Fusion, DMX, grid, ground reaction inertia device, like so many cool technologies.
So awesome. You just
not good
grew
for
up
your
with
body, but yeah. But that's what I grew up in.
But again, which ultimately led you to
Altra.
But before that, one of your things that I learned about you right in early age, you were 12 years old. Was it 12 years old when you ran your first marathon? 10.
Yeah.
When you ran your first marathon.
I wanted to run when I was 8.
My goodness.
I begged.
Which marathon was it for?
St. George.
Yeah.
Yeah. My parents, everybody ran my next door. Like I said, everybody was running St. George. It was the keystone of the year, and when I was 8, I was like, can I run? And my parents were like, you're 8, and that year at St. George, I turned 9. They gave the Performance of the Day trophy, which was a 6-foot tall trophy. They call it the Dole Performance of the Day trophy. And they gave it to the youngest runner, who was 12, who ran a pretty dang good 4.5-hour marathon. And I just never let my parents hear the end of it. It was like, if you would have let me run, would have got that trophy that's twice as tall as I am, And I promise you, to a 10-year-old kid runner, there's nothing cooler than a 6-foot tall trophy. That's as good as it gets. Even today.
I don't have a 6-foot trophy.
I don't either.
So. Maybe get you a 6-foot trophy.
No, what would I do with that crap? I think about it now, but then that was the thing, was the 6-foot tall trophy, right? And I just begged and begged, and my parents were like, no, you're 9 now. You're like, no. And my dad finally, eventually, I just peppered him so much. He was just like, fine. Just leave me alone. If you run rim to rim in the Grand Canyon and you run to the top of Mount Timpanogos and back, and you do these other 2 long runs, that these are things that are like all harder than a marathon.
Yeah.
And I think the thought process for him is like,
Timp alone is what's the elevation gain?
Yeah. Almost 5,000 feet of vert, and I think my dad just thought like, hey, he'll go and do this and realize this is for the big boys. Like these are adult activities, and I'm kind of messed up. I kind of liked it. So I ran rim to rim in the Grand Canyon and killed it, Right. And then the next day they were like, well, we're going to have a Supai. You're probably, beat it.
You're 9 years old.
I'm 9. Yeah. I'm coming.
Rim to rim.
Yeah. So the next day I went and did 25 more miles at Havasupai. So we did 50 miles in 2 days, and my dad's like, well, crap, I think I got to let him run the marathon. So against all his wishes, they signed me up and let me run. And, the thing about doing stuff harder than the race is that the race tends to go well. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like doing all this crazy marathon training. I was just having fun running in the mountains and the canyons, and I ran 3:08 as a 10-year-old, state record.
Incredible.
And I was just chasing deer around the foothills,
10 years old. I hope that just sinks in, everyone. Anyone who's run a marathon, you're like, what? At 10 years old? 3:08.
Well, and it's hard for me to talk about.
That's like a 10 and a half. What is that? 10 and a half minute. I don't know, whatever that is. And
it's 7-minute miles.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. It's stupid.
That's crazy.
I talk about this.
At 10 years old.
I'm not speaking from experience. I'm telling somebody else's story.
Yeah.
That's how it feels to me.
And by the way, Golden continues. You continue to run mountains. I called it last week. I'm like, hey,
the last 2 times you've called me, I've been up doing 14ers.
Yeah. He lives in Colorado. You live in Colorado now.
Yeah.
And so you have this goal to hit all. Are you trying to do all of? I guess you can't do all of them because some of them are on private land and stuff.
Yeah, but pretty much. I've done about 40 of them.
Yeah, 40.
So I'm most of the way there.
Incredible.
But I like to run down them really fast. Yeah. That's my thing. Since a young age,
I try to keep
downhill,
up with you going down. I know.
So I set lots of downhill records. Yeah. It's like
it's kind of fun
on
to
big
watch.
mountains. It's more of an X Games sport than it is running. Mm-hmm. It's, people think like, oh, this is running, but if you actually run down giant mountains really, really fast, it's like I'm wearing protection,
mm-hmm. Which we're going to get into. We're going to get into that in a second.
Head to toe protection.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a contact sport. Mm-hmm. So it's fun. It's probably closer to like downhill mountain biking, mm-hmm. as far as what it is.
Yeah, your foot
I love that.
Strike is so quick going downhill. It's quite fun to follow you going downhill. You were kind on me today when we were going down those. You were keeping it light, but usually you're just like a mountain goat going down.
Yeah, and going fast, I just love the adrenaline. Mm-hmm. Like I could die at any moment, fly off a cliff or like, crash hard. And I crash hard. I drop blood almost every week. Mm-hmm. Every time I post, a mountain on Strava, my sister, one of them has to chime in and be like, more blood, like, yeah. That's how you know you're alive though, right? Yeah. You bleed and you're like, I'm alive. Yeah. I'm a man. Like I'm alive. Like I'm bleeding.
Exactly.
Cool.
So all this experience growing up, you're in the running store all the time. You have people coming in all the time looking for, you were, like you said, the age of 8 or 9, you're already counseling people on running technique, on their gait, their running style, their foot strike, everything that goes along with it.
Yeah. Because my dad really.
Yeah. And your dad taught you that. He still has that perfect running.
Had to.
Form. Yeah.
Yeah. Had to.
So years and years pass, you're just in there always grinding away. You're going through school, you're growing up, and you just hear everything. You're hearing and at what point do you start going, I got to change something in the shoe that led you to that idea of, people may have heard this story before, but start chopping shoes up, start Frankenstein and shoes here for people to get to learn how to run properly and avoid injuries and the whole bit.
I think the intention to do it on a mass scale was never really there. It was very much about me and the people I was working directly with. And my dad, Frankensteining shoes was nothing new to me. It was nothing new in my house. That was something we did. My dad was always Frankensteining shoes. So, for him, for people that don't know my dad, Hawk, no cartilage in his knee, blew his knee out playing football in college. He was a great college football player, actually drafted to play pro baseball. I guess it was before there was really a draft, but same idea, by the Angels. And he blows his knee out. Obviously total career change, no longer going to be a professional athlete, unhappy triad injury. So, meniscus and both supporting ligaments. And he's sitting there bone on bone. And the doctor said, you're never going to walk normal. You're never going to run again. And the second part has been true. Like he's never walked normal again in his life. And he gets into weightlifting, gets into, jumping off big cliffs to, still get an adrenaline rush, I guess. And then he gets a postcard in the mail. His roommate's dad sent him a postcard, and they get this postcard and it says, if you guys are real men, you'll do this. And they flip the postcard over and it's Las Vegas Marathon. And it's like 2 months away. And my dad's 240 pounds, my height, 5'10" ish.
I can't imagine that.
Just jacked, right? Near state record in the bench press. Yeah. The guy's just huge. Totally ripped. And he's like, well, I got no knee. Like I can, but this man does not back down to a challenge, So him and his buddy, they go and try and run the Las Vegas Marathon. It's disastrous. Like they barely finish. They're at the very end, at the back of the race. And for the first time, I think in my dad's, life, he was really bad at something, and it pissed him off, and he was like, I gotta get good, and, to make a long story short, he sees some Kenyan runners run eventually, and his knee's just excruciating. Just so incredibly painful for him. but he sees these canyon runners run. And he's like, oh my gosh, I crashed down the road. We all crashed down the road. Those guys float. They float down the road. I'll bet if I taught myself to run like that, my knee wouldn't hurt so bad. And so he teaches himself to run like a canyon, and it helps his knee not hurt. And 7 years later, 1984, he wins the St. George Marathon, runs 2:22, and his shoes, he's
2:22.
2:22, yeah.
Holy.
Which is fast today, but I mean, back then it was.
Oh yeah, that's really fast.
Yeah. But his shoes, he actually got the lightest, most flexible shoes you get. And then he drilled holes all through the back half of the shoe to make the back half of the shoe lighter, because that made his knee hurt less. And so that was, I was 2 years old at the time. And this is the kind of shoe modifying that was happening at my house from a very young
saw
age.
this.
I saw it all the time. I mean, my dad was always messing with shoes. So that was nothing new. And, for me, I went and lived in Hawaii for a couple of years. And, I think your question was like, what led you to start questioning, the status quo per se? And I had spent 10 years at the running store by the time I went off to college. And, I'd been, trying to be really good at what I do. Most people come in to buy shoes because something hurts or something's wrong. I wanted to be really good at helping out with that. And so I made that my college major, was like the foot health and running injury major, and, as I got into it, before I went off to college, I'm like, we don't actually get any training. People that work at running stores, we get
just
training.
Start running.
Yeah, no, every runner, like runners don't get any training. The employees, the staff at the running shoe store don't get any training except by shoe companies. Well, if you think about that, that's kind of backwards. Like that's just propaganda. That's not training. And I thought that was kind of messed up, and I started to question, it's like for 10 years, I'd been selling people shoes, and all the things the shoe companies had been telling me to do for people might have helped feel good in the short term, but they didn't create lasting long-term positive results. And so I'm starting to question like the whole thing, and
even at an early age, right?
I'm like 17, 18.
Wow.
And I'm like, I mean, I've been selling shoes for 10 years at this point though. And I'm just feeling like, wow, we don't really get any scientific training. We just get propaganda from shoe companies, and obviously it's in their best interests. So I'm questioning it. Go off to college, do all this research, and basically everything I've been taught is scientific bullcrap. It's just not true. The propaganda that the shoe companies had told me to tell people, I mean, I'll just give the best example. I move out to Hawaii for 2 years at the end of college, and I get out there. I'm surrounded by giant Polynesians with flat feet that are overpronating like crazy, wearing no shoes or terrible shoes, slippas, flip-flops. And this is everything every shoe company has, and, shoe insert, whatever company has told me is terrible. It's like, these people are heavy. They are overpronating. Their feet are collapsing in. They have flat feet. Like, these are death sentences in the shoe world. And I'm, and I'm still trying to root this out of me. I mean, it's definitely against our philosophy to some degree, but it's still been beaten into my head for a decade. And, I get to know these Polynesians, and I'm working with people, and I'm just like, hey, so shoes and feet are kind of my thing. And, you're you, and I know what kind of shoes you wear, and you have flat feet and all this stuff. I'm like, I can help you. Like, tell me about your feet. And they would always look at me and they'd be like, bruh, my feet don't hurt. And like one after another. And I'm like, no, it's cool. You can tell me, like, it's fine. I'd love to help you out. My feet don't hurt, bro. Like over and over, and nobody's feet hurt. 350 pounds, flat feet, collapsing in, wearing no shoes. No problem, and that made me really start to question, like, okay, we got to dig into this. So I spent 2 years just digging into, history of foot conditions and where foot problems come from and all this stuff. And, you look at the billion people on the planet that don't wear modern shoes, they got no foot problems. it's not an issue for them. They have short-term things like, they might kick a coral or like drop something on their foot or, get a fungus or, something like that. But they don't have any of the chronic foot conditions we have. You hear people say like, oh, I got my bunions from my mom. No, you got your fashion sense from your mom. You got your bone malleability from your mom, but you still wear shoes, and shoes are shaped like feet with bunions. And therefore you got a bunion, neuromas, what we used to call plantar fasciitis, plantar fasciopathies, any kind of foot condition basically coming from your shoes. Like 99% of all chronic foot conditions are caused by the elevated heels and tapered toe boxes of modern shoes deforming your foot out of natural position. And the more your feet come to look like the shoes you wear, the more pain you're in, period.
I hope you're taking note, everyone, because this was such, you got to know, you made such an impact in me. Because when we first started getting involved together, I was a heel striker, clearly a heel striker. I didn't understand why I kept getting all these
injuries.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to hurt.
I mean, I would get injury after injury, and you had me read Born to Run. McDougall wrote that book, and it was incredible. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, like, could this be?
Yeah.
Through multiple techniques that you taught me and just understanding, like, I really am born to run. I mean, as humans.
Yeah.
I don't have those injuries anymore.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's amazing.
It's so cool.
So thank you, Golden.
Yeah. No, love it. I love that. That's the best. Me either. I mean, I really got into all this stuff, shortly before Altra. And, I tell people, since I learned to get my toes spread and strengthen my feet and realign my body and run with great technique, like, I have not had a typical overuse running injury in over 15 years.
Incredible. So, okay. With that said,
yeah,
that's all these years, of experience and passion for running, passion for the sport, of course, and helping people. Because that is definite. I do appreciate that about you, Golden. You're the core of it. You just love to help people.
Yeah.
Heck, I ran into someone yesterday that like flipped out because they're an Ultra fan, and then her mother, who lives in another state, took a clinic from you, and it changed. And she's coming to the senior games in Utah here next week in St. George.
So cool.
And it's amazing how many people you've helped, not just me, but like countless people you've helped. So you go from that to start, like, you chopped up. Okay. So what you just said, you talked about.
Yeah, we didn't make the connection.
You talked about foot shape.
Mm-hmm.
This is ultimately what led to you started chopping shoes.
Yeah.
And sending them to the shoe cobbler. And talk about that. And because that's a big part of it, the zero drop. That's the chopping part, which ultimately led to, hey, let's start Ultra.
Yeah. So I'd come back from Hawaii. I'm now back managing the shoe store, and everything I know is wrong. I mean, everything I've studied at school is like, everything I've learned from shoe companies is 100% scientific garbage. It doesn't add up. It does not follow what I have learned in school. It doesn't follow any of the studies I've done, any of the research I've done, you name it. And we start filming people. Slow motion video came available. We're able to watch people run in slow motion. And
you do that in the store?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these Vibram 5 fingers had come out. We'd been selling those for a couple of years as a training tool to strengthen your feet.
I still have
and
a
work
pair
on your
at
form.
home.
Yeah, me too. They're such a great training tool. And we want to see, like, well, what's happening. And my dad basically would teach everybody that came in the store, or almost everybody, a lesson on how to protect their body and have more fun when they're running. Basically teach them how to run in a way to protect their knees and basically what he had to do. Because if he doesn't run with great technique, he doesn't run at all, because, bone on bone. And so we start filming, and we film people barefoot and 5 fingers. They look pretty similar. Humans naturally, in their natural state, run in a nice low impact way. And then we film them in the shoes.
That was one of the things you pointed out to me when as a kid, like, kids run naturally.
Yeah, look beautiful without shoes on.
Watch a kid. You remember you telling me that. Watch a kid run. It's perfect.
It's gorgeous.
Until you start sticking shoes on them.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So then we start filming them, these same people, in the shoes that we've sold them. So we film them barefoot or we film them in 5 fingers, and then we film them in the shoes that we've just sold them. And I just remember we're all like, I don't know if we're really helping people here. And I remember my dad looking at me and he's like, I try and give everybody a lesson on how to protect their body when they run. And the film here makes it look like we sell them a pair of shoes that undoes everything we teach them every single time they go running. I get one shot at teaching them. The shoes get to teach them badly every single time they're out there. So I started looking at shoes, like why, and it turns out as I dig into shoes, drop was not a term. We invented it. But the way shoes are built, shoes are twice as thick and twice as heavy in the heel as they are on the forefoot. The midsole foam is. All the cool stuff's in the back half of the shoe. The hard heel counter's in the back of the shoe. The back half of running shoes is a lot heavier than the front half. And as we would watch people go through the gait cycle, basically as they would run, when you're barefoot, you stay pretty parallel to the ground like this. But in a shoe, what happens is your foot comes out in front of your body and your heel drops because the back half of the shoe is heavier. And then because it's thicker, it engages the ground 2.5, 3 inches earlier. And that's what we were seeing on film. And obviously I didn't think that was a good thing. And as I started to break down, how shoes were made, it was like, okay, so, barefoot running is not an option. 5 fingers are not an option. We live in a concrete world. Humans may have been born to run, but we were born to run on grass and dirt. We weren't born to run on concrete. Our whole muscle structure and the way the bones of our feet are not set up for that. And then I'm training for a 50-mile race, super rocky race in the mountains. It's not happening. I need protection. And so it's like, how do we mimic running on grass or dirt with protection? And that was where I came up with this idea of, okay, let's get shoes that have a moderate amount of cushioning, like the right amount of cushioning for the distance we're doing, that help the concrete feel like grass or dirt. And then if I'm running in the trails, they need to have traction, they need protection, rock protection, etc. And this whole idea of getting the shoe to be weight balanced front to back, be the same amount of cushioning front to back, and then shaping the shoe so it's actually shaped like a human foot. Instead of, most shoes are pointy.
Is brilliant.
Thank you.
Why has nobody done this before? I know
people
what the?
People say this to me all the time. That's brilliant. I'm like, it's really stupid actually that we have to go back and shape shoes to be shaped like feet. And you may be looking at yourself, thinking to yourself, no, I'm wearing shoes right now. Of course shoes are shaped like feet. No, they are not.
They are not.
Shoes are not shaped like feet.
Which is a big point. I remember you talking about this, by the way. This is the foot shape. I remember when the design was being made, you specifically wanted to have 5
metatarsal heads basically there.
Right
toes.
There. And when they first came to market, you could always tell on a trail if someone was using Ultras because of that print.
Yeah. Or you'd see this too,
Yeah.
Yep.
It was so cool.
Still today, I was out in the mountains just the other day and, I was running with a buddy. We were up doing a couple 14ers and I was like, somebody's got Lone Peaks in front of us.
Yeah.
And he's just like, how do you know? I'm like,
you can tell.
He's like, oh yeah. And sure enough, this girl comes trucking down the trail and it's like Lone Peaks, Yep. It's easy to see.
I remember you talking about that in the early days. You said you had me take my socks off and I put my foot down and what does your toes do? Boom.
Well, what they should do.
Yeah.
Most people's don't much right now.
And in a traditional running shoe, you can't do that. There's and yet that's what your foot naturally does. Hence this.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you did really 3 things. If I remember correct me, 3 big things. You chopped the heel down. You see, got 0 drop. You created that.
Yeah.
Ultra
just meaning
created that.
The cushioning of the shoe doesn't drop from the heel to the forefoot. That would be, it's not dropping anymore. That's the whole, it's a shoe. It's a term to define the cushioning basically.
Yeah. Yep. 0 drop, foot shape. And then I don't know if there was much talk about female specific last. I remember that was a big
fit
deal.
For her. Yeah, absolutely. Women's running shoes have always just been takedowns of men's. They pull a little volume off the top and call it a female shoe. And I always thought that was garbage. Women's feet are V-shaped compared to men's feet. Men have more like 2x4 shaped
So
feet.
instead of pink and shrinking it, you actually
shrink
made
it, pink it. Like we actually built the woman's shoes from the ground up. Totally different, different
the
arch.
last was specific for women.
Yeah, different foot, shape profile, arch profile, heel fit, everything. Over the top. I mean, when you're fitting shoes as a shoe fitter, most women are like, it's kind of tight over my instep. Women have a higher instep, in comparison to a men's instep in general, And so just like putting that allowance in a last is another thing. So last is like the form the shoe's built around.
So before Altra, you were able to, let's use this as an example. You were able to take a traditional running shoe. By the way, everyone, I think this is one of the first that ever came off the line.
I think that's one of the original 2,500 pair.
Yeah. I think it was
probably one of the first 50 of those 2,500. Yeah.
So cool.
Maybe
I've kept it.
Maybe one of the first 5.
I probably with us, we each got one, I think, I don't even know if I've run in this, it's like 1 or 2. I didn't want to run in it. So it just sits on my shelf. So cool. But you were able to take a traditional running shoe and take the heel off. You would take it to a shoe cobbler. You would take the heel off and then re-glue it back on and give it to the person in the store, right? They were able to.
Yeah. So once I figured out I wanted the shoes to be level front to back, weight balance front to back, that's where toaster oven came in. So I talked to my dad about it, gave him the idea, and he's like, well, that makes sense, And he's like, $275, wait till the glue bubbles. Do it downstairs so mom doesn't get mad. So I go down to the basement and pop a shoe in a toaster oven and heat it up, left it in a little long so like the laces melted and some of the TPU plastic stuff melted ugly. But, was able to pull the rubber off. Mm-hmm. And then I took the foam out and I put a flat piece of foam in or a couple flat pieces of foam, glued the rubber back on and went for a run. And for the first time in my life, I'm wearing a fully cushioned running shoe, but it's weight balanced now. It doesn't have this chunky heel on it. And I'm like, I feel like I'm running barefoot on grass. And it was this moment of like, thank you, just like this glorious moment. And that's great and all, but I was like, I need to prove this with others. So I did it for my staff. We had like about 20 people working for us at the time. All but one of them loved it, And so I start working with the shoe cobbler down the street who actually ran rivers with my dad in the Grand Canyon. Robert there at Village Shoemaker, he was just an awesome guy. And I'll still never forget like approaching him with the idea. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I explained it to him and he's looking at me and this guy's like a 2nd generation shoemaker, certified podorthist, like, and he's like, I usually add things to shoes. We don't usually take things away. So explain this to me again. I explain, like, hey, when the heel is elevated, it actually changes your ankle and your hip and your knee and your back and changes your posture. And it makes you actually move differently. It changes the way we as humans move. And I kind of went through it all and showed him the running form stuff and, get your toes to spread. And he starts shaking his head and he's like, well, that sure makes a lot of sense. And
you did like what, 1,000 of them or something?
Yeah, he ended up doing about 1,000 pairs of shoes for us that first year.
Incredible.
Yeah, amazing.
And people came back with testimonials saying,
so we actually paid him. We paid him $10 in store credit or whatever to bring back this full page sheet after 6 weeks that had like 50 questions on it of what kind of changes it made in their body, what hurt more, what hurt less, what muscles got worked out more or less sore, how long it took to get used to it, all this stuff. And it was incredible. I mean, we had these 5 areas that just like off the charts success with, basically people with plantar fascia, fasciitis, fasciopathies.
Neat.
Okay. Yep. It's super common. Shin splints,
I used
runner's
to have
knee,
them all the time. Used to have it.
IT band and low back, those 5. And just incredible success with those 5, like just a ridiculous success rate.
Incredible.
And, most of them made sense to me. The plantar fascia and the low back one, I hadn't wrapped my head around how that was working yet. It makes total sense now. But at the time I was like, well, that's cool. But yeah, we had all these hundreds and hundreds of surveys and we basically did this giant, research project on living, breathing, running, hurting humans and got all this data back. And then was able to take it to the shoe companies and be like, hey, if you will shape the shoes like so the toes can spread out and make them weight balance front to back and get the cushioning to be the same front and back, here's the proof. Here's hundreds of data points. These 5 injuries that are 5 of the biggest running injuries out there, will go away 90+% of the time. And it was not received well.
So what does an entrepreneur do? We see it.
I'm a reluctant entrepreneur.
We see a problem. We create a solution.
Yeah. So, we were already building it. We'd built 1,000+ pair at this point, at the running store. And my cousin Jeremy comes along and this is kind of most of the way into this, but he goes for a run on my birthday with me and he hasn't run in 5 years because his knees hurt. And he's like, well, that's cool. Let me try a pair. He's like, it's not going to work for me. Like my knees are toast, bro. And we go run out to Dry Canyon. It's like 1.5 miles. And he's like, oh my gosh, my knees don't hurt. like you changed the way I run and my knees don't hurt. I'm like, yeah, it's, it's not all the shoes. It's the technique that the shoes promote. And
he was in one of those chopped up ones.
Yeah. He's wearing a chopped up shoe. And then we switch back and we're wearing the same size shoe. So we, there's limited numbers of these. He puts a normal shoe back on, all of a sudden his knees start hurting again. And, I sent him with a chopped pair and he tries it out and he's blown away. And he's like, well, give me a real pair. And I'm like, what do you mean a real pair? He's like, well, not made by you. And I was like, well, they don't exist. And he's like, you mean to tell me there are no running shoes on the planet that are shaped like feet? I was like, yep. And no running shoes on the planet that have the same amount of cushioning front to back. This is the way we're born. And I was like, nope, they don't exist. And he's like, I don't believe you. I will go find them. I was like, what do I know? I just managed a running store and have been involved in running shoes since I was 2, and he goes and does the research, calls me up like a week later. He's like, they don't exist. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's like, well, we have to make them. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm not happy about it. I don't want to do it, but deep down inside, I know you're right, and I'd kind of been coming around to this for a while at this point in time, but he was like, well, I'm going to find somebody to make them. And I was like, you do that. And next thing I know, he's like coming up with contacts. And he's like, these guys can do some prototyping and there's prison manufacturing that can be done here. And I'm just like, okay, MacGyver, and, next thing we know, we're, to make a really long story short, you got involved and it's a 1.5 years later and we're about $1 million in debt and, we're freaking out and we're super excited at the same time. So, yeah.
And Altra was born.
And
the solution came out.
Yeah.
And it solved those 3 points of zero deviation between back and forefront.
Yep.
Foot shape, again, huge. I can't even talk about that enough, how important that is,
Yep.
And then the female specific last.
Yep.
And by the way, I brought, well, you got that one. That's the Lone Peak. Instinct, the first one.
The very first Altra. And the Lone Peaks were the very first trail Altra.
Yeah, that was the first trail. And why did you call it the Lone Peak? I remember you told me you called it because it was one of your favorite peaks to run. It was so hard to...
Yeah, Lone Peak, I failed on that mountain multiple times before I made it. And
such a great mountain.
It's 7,000 vertical feet from trailhead to summit. It's just a monster.
Incredible. So that was the first one. They called it the Lone Peak. This was a fun one.
That's the Atom.
It's the Atom. They called it the Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And I've got the Atom version.
Yeah. And actually all the original shoes, because of the female specific last, we had the Instinct and the woman's version was the Intuition. And then with the Atom, we had the Eve.
Again, notice the foot shape, so these are the 3 originals, although that Lone Peak is the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
But so and I want to say that it's been an incredible success. I mean, you guys, congratulations. Blew up all around the world. So fun. And one thing I love about the brand, we were talking about this on the run this morning. Like back in the day when I was wearing Saucony or Adidas or whatever it was, you just see a person wearing Sauconys at a race and it It's Saucony's. Cool. Hey, you like, hey. Ultra, completely different. You run into a world, people flip out. They're just like, oh, you like Ultra? I like Ultra. Suddenly you're best friends. So it's like that.
Like I said, it's the foot shape fraternity.
It's awesome. Must feel good. I mean, you made an impact in the world. So I thank you on behalf of all the runners of the world, Golden. It was your passion, and like John Maxwell once said, passion finds a way, and your passion over the years found a way to be able to help people. And which is leading into the next project that you're in. Yeah. And to lead into that, it's interesting. You taught me multiple things, really important things that helped change my running style, helped me become. Now, do I get the odd injury from time to time? Yeah, but usually it's because I try to increase my miles too fast or something, and then I realize, okay, just slow down. But the
small kind stuff.
Yes,
I haven't seen you actually get a real.
No, I haven't had an injury.
None
of those injuries that you talked about. No, I haven't had one of them.
Yeah.
Since I started working with you. You taught me several things. Number one, if you can take one step, take two. That was one of them. And that's a really important point, because that gets into,
particularly for trail running.
Yeah. Particularly because what you're trying to do is that, which brings in the next one. How many steps per minute per foot? It's 90.
165 to 180 steps a minute, depending on your pace. Yeah.
Well, for both.
Yeah.
But for one side, if you're counting one side.
Yep.
90 approximately, 90 or less. And I remember this one time. And so if anyone's watching, you're like, ooh, how can I improve? Count it out, right? I mean, you can just count it out.
27 to 30 steps on one leg in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Super simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Or just wear a float run harness, which we'll talk about.
Which we'll talk about in a second.
Makes it happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, in fact, let's get into that, because, that was the other thing. That was running one of the technique. Other thing was running technique, to have your
elbows back, chest forward.
Which is, I got to run with this today. This is Golden's brand new project, PR gear, which stands for personal record gear. And I remember this time when we were running together and we saw this runner coming down the canyon, and it was so fun because Golden stops. He's like, just watch. And it was like he was floating. And to that point about the steps,
it was like,
you said
some canyon or something.
Just
right? Like
beautiful. And arms up,
elbows back, chest forward, floating. And we watched him go past, and I remember thinking, oh, that's cool. Float run. Talk about this here for a second. Very simple little tool. Yeah.
Becomes a tool to help you learn proper running technique.
Yeah. So I
used this morning for the first time. I was so excited.
Yeah. And it's basically a running form coach that comes with you every step of every run until it becomes second nature, till it becomes muscle memory. And, it's really furthering on the mission that Altra was started to, which was, the whole point behind Altra originally was get people to run with better technique. And, wearing zero drop shoes certainly helps. I do running technique coaching privately. And I feel like I'm pretty good at it. I've taught
extremely
thousands of running technique classes in my life. I've over the years found out what works and what doesn't, and I can teach it quickly and efficiently. But I can spend 2 hours with a client going through everything personal with their form. And if they remember 20% the next day, that's pretty good. I can spend 30 seconds and put that thing on them, and it's better than I am in 2 hours. They can spend $300 paying me to help them for 2 hours.
It's amazing.
Or they can put a $12 float run harness on.
I love that you call it the float run harness.
Yeah,
because that was the way you described it to me.
Yeah.
So you just slip this around. I got to do this without smacking the microphone here.
A little tricky.
Is this right?
Yep. Put it on. Get the thumb loops under the armpits, and then
slip it in here.
Yep. Just basically 2 instructions for people is you focus on keeping your elbows back, and you don't stretch the thumb loops.
Yeah. So you don't want to be running like this.
Right. And if you stretch the thumb loop, that means you're doing something you shouldn't be. And so not only is it effective, people don't realize when you arm overstride, meaning when your elbow gaps forward of your hip, which is what most runners do, that causes your foot to land out in front of your knee, which causes your body to jam. and makes it so you can't absorb impact. When your foot lands underneath your knee, that big 3-foot spring running from your toe up to your hip, everything can bend and absorb impact. So, this is how I can run down 14,000 foot mountains and have never had my knees hurt in my life, because I've had it beat into my head since I was 2 years old that you keep your elbows behind your hips to make sure that your feet are landing underneath your knees. So this big 3-foot suspension spring, which is like your rock shocks in your bike or whatever, is actually absorbing the impact. And as long as you're doing that, things are good, right? And so that's essentially what this does, is helps people just reprogram and get that straight. And, it is literally the best running technique coach in the world.
Incredible.
And it's $12.
So simple. Yeah. And go to, you can get this on your website, right? Puregear.
Puregear.co.
.co. And you got a code for people today?
Yeah. Cup of Joe 25.
Cup of Joe 25.
Cup of Joe 25. Yeah.
And you get a discount on it.
25 off.
Incredible. By the way, that was the fourth point, is that your knees are springs. I remember you telling me that. And anytime I try to get away from that, and that goes to the counting of your steps as well. So 2 other projects that you have.
Yeah.
The gloves, you're wearing the gloves right now.
Yep. Trail gloves. These are upcoming, not quite out yet, but this is something that a lot of trail runners have done for about 20 years now, is they get bike gloves and they perforate them and they cut the pads out. But it's protection for scrambling or stabilizing on rocks or grabbing trees, or if you're like me, if you're not falling, you're not trying hard enough. And so I fall regularly. Right. And, the thing people don't realize, when you fall and your hands hit, it hurts, and then your hands give way, and then the rest of your body gets messed up. If you land on gloves, it doesn't hurt, and you're able to just push back up off the ground without as much damage done. So
I can testify to that.
Literally an injury protection.
Stoked for when those come out, by the way. Super stoked.
Yeah. Super breathable.
Watch for those, everyone. Watch for those, everyone, for sure. And then you've got some,
we got bridge soles as well. And, there's a lot of people out there that are, for whatever reason, due to negative media campaigns by traditional shoe companies, et cetera, are afraid of zero drop, and the original idea for these was to be a bridge between regular shoes and zero drop shoes. So they have a little bit of drop to them, that lowers down over the first couple 100 miles. So it eases their body down from, a regular shoe to a zero drop shoe, basically. And then it provides, a deep heel cup, a met pad, and a little bit of arch. Super soft. They roll into a ball. They weigh 1/2 ounce. They're basically weightless. They stack underneath the insoles of the traditional shoe, and they just give the shoe a little bit more cush. And by deactivating these 3 zones, the forefoot, the arch, and the heel, they decrease the body's landing response. And landing response is what kind of lights up your calves and your foot muscles, and makes it a little bit harder to transition to more natural style running and more natural footwear. Incredible. And so this is just a bridge from traditional shoes to more natural shoes. That's kind of how it started, but it's actually become a thing where I just did a huge deep dive on research and figured out, like, almost everybody needs a met pad. And the met pad comes up behind your forefoot, because shoes are all dished, and your foot is sunk in like this, and really it's supposed to be like this. And so this helps, when you wear a shoe, put your foot back in a natural position, if you will. But also, killer for plantar fascia stuff and Achilles issues, and especially neuromas. Neuromas are super common in today's world, caused by, traditional toe boxes. And the met pad helps gently spread your toes apart and provides a lot of neuroma relief. So
love it.
Those are the bridge soles. So they're multi-use. I just tell people it's like having an ankle brace. You wear it when you need it. You pull it out when you don't. You keep it in the closet, and when life happens and something weird starts to bother you, pop them back in. Super easy thing.
Amazing.
Affordable. So
you're like I said, countless amount of people. I don't even know how many people you've affected over the years with this passion, and running is a passion. I mean, it's incredible. And so thank you, Golden. Thanks for being here. You're honestly an inspiration for me, and you've made such an impact in me. I love to run. In fact, my Instagram handle, I changed it over the years to just called "Oh, the Places You'll Run."
Yeah.
Because of the book, "Oh, the Places You'll Go." And I changed it to "Oh, the Places You'll Run," because I used to travel all over the world.
Yep.
So I got a couple quick questions for you as we're closing.
Bring it on.
Favorite season to run?
Right now.
Yeah. Autumn.
It's a tough call between wildflower season. Wildflower season in Colorado is like pretty off the hook. I gotta say, but changing leaves season in Utah, mountains pretty tough to beat.
So
pretty tough to beat.
I have to agree with you. Number 2, you've traveled the world. You've run all over the world. You have a favorite place to run?
Oh man, Banff is pretty good.
Pretty amazing.
New Zealand, Rootburn Track, Milford Sound.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's pretty good. I just got back from Switzerland. Never seen anything like that.
Really?
Like the Swiss Alps. Sorry. Like
the places you run,
I love
baby.
this place, but we were in Murin. We stayed in Murin. You're staying up at 5,500 feet. You're looking off down to 2,000 feet. So you're looking 3,500 feet down. You're looking up to 13,000 feet. So you're looking, 6,500 feet up, and there's a canyon wall like right there with 300 foot plus waterfalls on it. I mean, like the scale just messes with your brain. So I got to say, as far as like mind blowing places, the Bernese Oberland, and I got to run at the Matterhorn. That was pretty cool too.
So incredible.
The Swiss Alps probably take the cake for me.
Awesome. Do you listen to music when you run?
Negative.
No?
Not very often.
Okay. You get into the zone.
I think it's
the moment.
It's a little bit of a sin to listen to music while trail running.
Oh, I have to agree with you.
I have on the road occasionally. I did it at the end of a race one time, and it worked really well for me. But that's an oddity for me.
Perfect.
The occasional podcast, though, I'll do that.
Golden, thank you. Seriously.
Thank you.
This is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
So fun. You made an impact on my life. I know countless people around the world are better runners, more passionate runners, more less injuries with their running because of your passion and because of your knowledge. And I'm stoked for this next.
They have to follow it,
part.
Though.
Yeah. But this one, this is becoming a part of. It's going to become a part of my routine. So thank you very much. Cool. Even though you taught me this years ago, this is a great tool to be able to keep it in check.
Yeah. Yep.
So thank you everyone for joining on this episode of A Cup of Joe with Golden Harper.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. It's so good to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Stoked about this one. I hope you're inspired to be able to take your walking, running, whatever, to the next level, whatever that might mean for you. So thanks for joining, everyone. Make it a great day.